Northern Ireland Police Chief Byrne is stepping down after a series of scandals now. A major data breach had recently occurred under him, and police in that part of the UK had inadvertently released the surnames, ranks and locations of almost all 10,000 officers and employees at the request of a citizen. Investigators now assume that militant splinter groups are in possession of the data. In Northern Ireland, 25 years after the peace agreement, police officers are still victims of attacks. And most recently, Byrne was also criticized for disciplinary measures against 2 police officers who were rejected by a court. According to an expert, the security situation in Northern Ireland has now deteriorated after this massive data breach by the police. It is now easier for pro-Ireland militants to identify and attack police service of Northern Ireland officers and staff. That was said by Richard English of Queen's University in Belfast. Intelligence gathering is an essential part of terror planning, and that task has been made easier, said the author of a book on the terrorist organization IRA. Morale within the police force has been undermined and trust in the authority has been severely weakened. A few weeks ago, the PSNI announced that it had inadvertently released personal information for all of its 10,000 officers and employees. This included details of last name, place of work and area of responsibility. Dozens of intelligence workers were also on the list, which is believed to have fallen into the hands of a radical Republican group. English pointed out that the Secret Service assessed the terrorist threat as serious. Accordingly, an assassination is very likely. However, possible attacks are not comparable to the terror campaign of the 1970s and 1980s, during which the IRA carried out several attacks in England, said the politics professor. But 25 years after the end of the Civil War, support for militant groups on both sides, Catholics and Protestant supporters of the union with Britain, has waned significantly, English said. Republican terrorist organizations have few active individuals and low community support. But they are occasionally capable of deadly force, and there's no reason to think they'll go away altogether. On the loyalist side, the terrorist groups are larger. Their goal is primarily to intimidate their own community. Paramilitary groups persist. They are stronger on the loyalist side than on the Republican side, but neither sets the political agenda in the way it did in the 1970s and 80s, the expert said. In this context, there's also further trouble elsewhere. Ireland is studying the feasibility of a legal challenge to Britain's Amnesty Act, which aims to drop charges over the violence that has rocked Northern Ireland for 3 decades. As the Foreign Secretary said on Monday. We have asked for a legal opinion, said Irish Foreign Minister Micheál Martin, and he told this the English Daily, adding that he expected a return within 2 weeks. We will then consider the actions we will take afterwards, he said, with the Irish government wondering about the bill's incompatibility with the European Convention on Human Rights. The text, presented in May 22, and I talked about this earlier on this channel, would see a drop in Northern Ireland conflict-related court cases for British soldiers and paramilitaries who choose to cooperate with the authorities. But more than 3,500 people died during Northern Ireland's 3-decade conflict between loyalists, mostly Protestants, and Republicans, mostly Catholics. Around 1,200 deaths are still being investigated by police, according to the British government. For London, the law must follow hundreds of these unresolved cases and would close them. But the bill, which is due to continue scrutiny in the UK Parliament next week, has drawn criticism from the families of the victims across Northern Ireland's political class, the Irish government, and from the Council of Europe, which recently expressed its deep concern at the failure of the United Kingdom to settle the differences surrounding this text. However, the law has been welcomed by veterans organizations who believe some soldiers have been unfairly prosecuted. In November 22, for the first time since the end of the conflict in 1998, A former British soldier was handed a 3-year suspense sentence for killing a man with a bullet in the back at a checkpoint in 1988. And I know that this is a very sensitive topic, but those discussions are absolutely valid. And I know that some people want arrest, but first of all, on the political side, there is no rest. And if people have committed crimes, they must be prosecuted. Here in Germany, for example, murder, and we're talking about this charge in some of the cases, is never running out, no matter how much time is passed. A lot of other crimes cannot be put in front of courts anymore, but murder can put on at court forever. And so if there truly is this case, the courts must deal with it. And so I have absolute understanding for the Irish government trying to stop this law. And if you want to know more about Northern Ireland, of course, as well, but also UK politics and Brexit, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll be there.